welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in our country over the past week or so. And as is customary, Guyana is always a place where there are many, many important issues taking place in a given week. So there is always an abundance of issues to discuss. I want to begin by welcome all of you to this program. I want to specifically say good evening to our viewers who are joining us on Facebook right across the length and breadth of Guyana and also across the Caribbean and North America. I also want to welcome our viewers who are looking at us on television in West Coast Berbice, Quarantine, New Amsterdam, Region 5 and 6. And I also want to welcome our listeners who are joining us on Freedom Radio. Once again, good evening and welcome to this program. And we have a lot of issues to discuss, so I want you to share this program with a friend or to a friend. I want you to call persons and invite them to join us in this discussion. I know I want to buy a little time before I begin to talk, before I begin to get into the program itself, so that our audience, can accumulate on Facebook and in other places where the program is being transmitted. So I welcome also your feedback. I don't get an opportunity to read the comments when I am on air, but I try as much as possible to read as many of the comments as possible when the program is completed. And I try to answer some of the problems or some of the issues that you raise in the program on subsequent programs. So, as you are aware, the first issue I want to address is the appeal which has been filed by APNU AFC against the decision of Justice Roxanne George, Chief Justice Acting, dismissing petition number 99, elections petition number 99. You would recall that APNU AFC, as is customary, misled their supporters into believing that by these two elections petitions which they have filed, that they will oust the PPP government from office. At the time when the petitions were filed, they held a big press briefing in the vicinity of the High Court, and they showcased themselves very well, pledging that their petitions are going to be successful and that they will succeed in removing the PPP government from office. And they filed those two petitions. Well, the first petition that was being heard, we filed a summons, or what is called a notice of application, to strike out the petition on the ground that it was not served within the prescribed time on no other than their leader, David Granger. You would expect that the first thing that they would do is to ensure that their leader is served. Lo and behold, this bunch did not serve the petition within the prescribed time on Mr. David Granger, the leader of the list. And that, the law says, is fatal. I have seen a lot of non-lawyers arguing a whole host of foolishness on Facebook and elsewhere, that it is wrong to dismiss a petition on that ground. Well, I have made it clear on repeated occasions, both on this program as well as in other fora, that the elections petition laws are sui generis, meaning that they are peculiar. They are not the ordinary law of the land. And they have certain rules and certain regulations that are peculiar and apply only to elections petition. Among those rules and regulations is a set of procedure governing every aspect of the petition, from the time it is filed, what has to be filed, what has to be served, when it is to be served, upon whom it has to be served, etc., etc. Every single step is regulated by procedure that is in writing. And the law in relation to elections petition, which is 500 years old, uniformly across the British Commonwealth, say that any infraction of those procedures, any misstep, any delay, any failure to observe any of the rules or regulations is fatal, and the court doesn't have jurisdiction. The court has no power to hear and determine a petition when one of the procedural steps have not been followed or some regulation has been breached. In their case, in relation to Petition 99, they did not serve on time. They breached the procedure in relation to service as it relates to Mr. David Granger. Those arguments were presented to the judge and were supported by authorities of decided cases, both in Guyana as well as the Caribbean, and indeed throughout the Commonwealth. And those cases uniformly say that when there is such a violation of the law, then the petition must be struck out. And the Chief Justice followed the law and struck out the petition on that ground. So they rushed and they filed an appeal. Well, by filing that appeal, they have now put themselves, in my view, in even greater problem. Because, as I keep saying, the law of elections petition is unique. It has its own rules. It is heard by a separate court called an elections court. And when there is an appeal, the grounds upon which you can appeal are specific and specified in the law. And the court to which you can appeal is also specified in the law. And these are matters that are not open to dispute in the law. These are matters that have been settled for centuries now. So, an appeal, as every lawyer will tell you, is a statutory process, meaning that there must be a law, a statute law, or the Constitution, which confers a right of appeal. And that law or that constitutional provision would tell you upon what grounds you can appeal. Well, in relation to elections petition, the matter is no different. And the Constitution of Guyana, Article 163, is the provision that deals with elections petition. And Article 163 tells you the grounds upon which you can file an elections petition. And it also tells you that if you are dissatisfied with a ruling in an elections petition, which court you can appeal to, and what grounds you can appeal upon. outside of those narrow parameters, you have no other remedy. You can't do anything other than confine yourself to what is set out in the Constitution. In this case, Article 163 of the Constitution. So, Article 163 says that the High Court shall have exclusive jurisdiction to determine any question regarding the qualification of any person to be elected as a member of the National Assembly, or, so this one doesn't apply, or B, either generally or in any particular place, an election has been lawfully conducted, or the result thereof has been or may have been affected by any unlawful act or omission. So here the Constitution sets out the ground upon which you can file an election petition. One, if you are challenging the qualifications of someone to be elected to the National Assembly. Recall they were challenging the qualifications of Charan Das Prasad after they lost the no confidence motion. They were saying that Charan Das was not qualified to be a member of the National Assembly. In that case, again, they fell into error because they didn't go by way of an election petition. And the Constitution says that when you are doing that, you have to go by election petition. The other ground upon which you can file an election petition is if you are alleging that an election has not been lawfully conducted, or the results of an election have been affected by some unlawful act or omission. Those are the only two grounds upon which you can file an election petition. One, that the election itself has not been lawfully conducted, or two, that the election results have been affected by an unlawful act. Well, those are the two grounds. It also says that if you are dissatisfied with a decision of the court in relation to that election petition, then you can appeal to the Court of Appeal. But it goes on to say that your appeal must relate to the determination of the issues listed in the Article 163, meaning that you can only appeal a decision either that an election petition has been lawfully conducted, or that the results has been affected by an unlawful act. Those are the only two questions. Once they are determined by the High Court, once those two questions are determined by the High Court, and you are dissatisfied with that determination, you can go to the Court of Appeal. Let me repeat that for emphasis. So the Constitution tells you the basis upon which you can file elections petition. In this case, we are not dealing with qualification of members to be in the National Assembly. In this case, we are dealing with whether the elections was lawfully held or whether the results were affected by an unlawful act. Those are the two grounds. The Constitution further says that when those questions are determined by a High Court judge, if you are dissatisfied, then you can appeal to the Court of Appeal. Now, in petition number 99, these questions were not determined. The judge did not get to the stage of determining these questions. because they did not even serve the petition within the time frame. So the question of whether an election was lawfully conducted or whether the results were lawfully affected by any unlawful act, those questions were never determined by Justice George. The case didn't reach that stage. The case was preemptively struck out because of non-service. The case did not qualify to be heard. The court didn't have jurisdiction to even determine those questions. Therefore, the Court of Appeal does not have jurisdiction to hear that appeal, because the Court of Appeal only has jurisdiction to hear a determination of these issues made by a High Court judge. I hope that I am clear enough. Therefore, if a case is struck out for non-service or for some procedural breach, then these questions have never been determined. They were not determined by the court. And if they are not determined by the court, you have no appeal. You only have an appeal from a decision relating to the determination of these questions. So the Court of Appeal, in my respectful view, has no jurisdiction to hear or determine their appeal, because the jurisdiction of the Court of Appeal is to hear a decision of a judge who has heard an election petition on its merits, meaning that the judge went into the election petition and determined either that the elections were lawfully or unlawfully conducted, or that the results were lawful or they were unlawful. Those questions were never determined by Justice George in petition number 99. And it is only a determination of those questions that are appealable, or that is appealable. So, in my view, their appeal is bound to fail. As a result, last week I filed a notice of motion to strike out the appeal as on the ground that the Constitution says that the Court of Appeal cannot hear the matter. It does not have the jurisdiction to hear the matter. We will get a lot of laugh when that motion comes up for hearing. And once my arguments are accepted by the court, then again they will be knocked out of the court. And that will be the end of the matter, because the CCJ can't help them. No court can help them here. They have appealed something that is not appealable. It is as simple as that. It is as simple as that. The other petition is left in the court, and the judge has ordered submissions. That petition, as you will recall, is very narrow. All it does is it questions the legality and the constitutionality of the recount order and the recount process. They are saying that the recount order that was made by GCOM, which their commissioners sat down and helped drafted, and the recount which they participated in, but they lost, they are now contending, as they normally do, whenever they lose anything, that it was illegal and unlawful. Well, the High Court, will also have to determine that. And submissions are being filed now, and there is a hearing in April when those submissions will be orally presented to Chief Justice George. So we are going to have that hearing soon. So in my respectful prediction, it is my respectful prediction that in very short time, both of their petitions will be dismissed. Both of their petitions will be dismissed. And their supporters and the world will see another exhibition. Well, not another exhibition, but another example confirming their ineptitude and their incompetence in every sphere, here in the legal sphere, as we have seen over that 5 months period, when they filed one foolish action after another, only to be dismissed by every court that heard it. The other matter that I want to speak on is the European Union Observer Mission report. As you may recall, the European Union fielded an observer team that observed the 2020 elections and was part of a large delegation of observers, including the Carter Center, the CARICOM, the Commonwealth, United Nations, and a whole host of other international agencies who were all here during the electoral process and who all saw the shenaniganism of APNU AFC on display after they realized that they lost the elections. And as is the practice, the EU observer team prepared a report, and in that report they chronicled what they witnessed. They chronicled the attempts made by APNU AFC to steal elections and pervert the electoral process, in particular the results of the elections, beginning with Mingo and ending with Lowenfield. And in that report, they detailed all those events which they witnessed. And that report has been handed over to all the stakeholders, all the political parties, and I suppose the international community. And that report contains also a list of recommendations. I represented the government of Guyana along with my colleague Gail Teixeira and Robeson Ben. We represented the government of Guyana at a roundtable discussion which was hosted by the European Union at the Convention Center last Monday. And a lot of people attended. The diplomatic community, the press corps was there, the political parties were there, and other important civil society organizations were present. And the APNU AFC was being represented by Annette Ferguson. And you saw the behavior that was on display. This woman is so uncouth and disrespectful, making all manner of reckless, idiotic, and asinine allegations, contending again, although the report is before her, and the report chronicled how they attempted to steal government and how they attempted to rig the elections. These people have no shame. This person, Annette Ferguson, is sitting in the presence of all these people in the most barefaced way and saying that the PPP rigged the elections. And her behavior was rambunctious, hostile, aggressive, and thuggish. That is all the adjectives I will use to describe her behavior. But I am happy that once again the international and the local community who were present got a first-hand opportunity to see the vulgar conduct on display by APNU AFC, still maintaining that they won the elections and the PPP rigged the elections. Absolute mad people. absolute mad people. But they are here in the country and we have to deal with them. Then, in the presence of all those people, she makes the allegation against me that I was seen sharing out ID cards on elections day. Well, I was shocked as well as elated. Shocked that that kind of behavior is thought fit by her to exhibit at such a forum. But elated that they have now said it outside of the parliament. You know, they have said it many times in the parliament, and once you say something in the parliament, you have legal immunity. You cannot be sued. Well, she said it outside of the parliament, in this meeting, in the presence of a number of persons. And I am happy that she did so, because I am already in the process of preparing legal proceedings to sue her. So I am going to have a good field day in court, and the country will see where and how they will prove that I was distributing ID cards on elections day. That asinine concoction of Basil Williams and Amna Ali in the compound of Monterey Post Primary School elections day. And my reaction is there on tape, on Facebook, for everyone to see, that I expressed total shock and denial. But this is how they pin things on you. So they make up a ridiculous fabrication and they repeat it often times and it suddenly becomes the truth. Well, I am happy that she has said that. And I am going ahead now. The courts are hearing libel matters very quickly now, as you would have observed. So she will go and explain to a judge of the High Court very soon where she got the info, how she knows that I was sharing out ID cards. Let them bring the person who saw me, or let them bring evidence that they have that I was sharing out ID cards on elections day. She has a nice house. I already have the certificate of title for the house. So when the judge makes her order for compensating me for libel, we will swiftly execute that judgment and we will take it from there. So I am just waiting for the transcript of those proceedings, which the transcript of what transpired in that meeting, because it was a taped meeting. So I don't want, when I go to court, she denies saying so, although she said it in a whole room of people. I will have the recording with her voice on it, so the judge will not have to be in doubt, and I will not have to go to any great lengths in proving that these words were uttered and were uttered by her. So we are going to have some fun later on within the next few months on that issue. In terms of the EU report, on a more serious note, the government of Guyana will review that report, is reviewing that report actually, along with all the other reports that we have received. And the recommendations are going to be reviewed and are being reviewed, and they will form part of the reform process of the electoral system in our country. They are going to be taken into account and will filter into the statutory reforms which we are undertaking right now of the relevant legislation, so as to strengthen our electoral machinery and for it to be impenetrable by persons of the caliber and ilk of Mingo and Lowenfield. So that is a work in progress, and we are going to be dealing with that shortly. Another issue that I want to speak about is the issue of fraud being committed and persons losing their transports as a result. Now, you would have been reading in the newspapers of the ongoing investigations by the Criminal Investigation Department of the Guyana Police Force in relation to a property located at Eccles Public Road, East Bank, Demerara, where the owner innocently lost his property and the property was transferred into the name of a fraudster and was about to be transferred from the fraudster's name to another person's name. Fortunately, the owner, the original owner, got wind of the situation and is now in the High Court trying to reverse the process and get the transport back into his name. Fortunately, the matter came to my attention and I immediately summoned the police and the investigations are ongoing. But from the information that is available in the public domain, I hope that you have an appreciation of the depth and breadth of this conspiratorial scheme that is involved in this fraud. So you have a fake identification card, Guyana National Identification Card. The information on the card is correct. So that the name is a Guyanese, the date of birth is correct, the address apparently is the man's address, but the picture, the photograph that is on that ID card is different from the actual person whose name is on the ID card. And that photograph, that man whose photograph appears there, we cannot find. We don't even know whether it's a Guyanese. But when you look at the ID card, it is so skillfully done that it is difficult to determine with the naked eye that it is a forgery. It is impossible. So that is how far they have gone. Then when you look at the file and look at the documents, you realize that it would appear that a court order of the High Court was concocted and forged and fabricated and used as the basis to transfer the man's property out of his name. It is a High Court order that was used. And now the record in the High Court can be found to support that court order. So a court order is made in a case. A court order doesn't drop from the sky. A judge makes an order in an ongoing case. Well, the entire file can be found. And the books can be found in the court. But when you look at the court order, it has the name of a judge. It is stamped by the court. So reading it and looking at it, you can't determine that that is a forged court order. That is another complex level of the fraud. You see, the reach that these people have, they have the ability to produce an ID card. They have the ability to fabricate a court order. That is the length and breadth of this conspiracy. And I don't know how many people are involved. And the notary public did a power of attorney that was used also as part of the fraudulent design. So that notary public can't remember who appeared before him. He doesn't know whether they produced an ID card. Even if they produced an ID card, it would have been a forgery. So the police have some information and they will be issuing some wanted bulletins now for persons who are connected. This is a wide and embracing conspiracy. And it is frightening. It is frightening. So the government of Guyana is committed to frontally address this problem, both legislatively as well as administratively. So legislatively, we are drafting a series of amendments to strengthen the necessary legislation, to increase the time, for example, for advertisements of transports to be put in the official gazette, and a number of amendments which I don't wish to dwell on here now. But administratively, we are strengthening the process as well. So the official gazette, as I've been speaking about, is one of the ways, one of the mechanisms that can avoid or prevent fraud from taking place once people read it regularly. And don't tell me that it is the government alone who has this responsibility to prevent this fraud. Because it is not. You who are owners of property have a duty to ensure that you are vigilant and you take the necessary precautionary measures to avoid your property from being fraudulently taken from you. So it is a joint responsibility. I see a few people making comments that the government must do this. The government is doing a lot, and the government will continue to do a lot. But you can't abdicate your responsibilities either, because you will lose the property, not the government. So you can continue to skylark and don't make efforts to check the official gazette in a timely way. So the official gazette accessibility is now being increased drastically. So the official gazette now is online and every one of you can access it free. Online. There's an official gazette website. You can go on it. What we are doing now is to rehabilitate that website to make it reader-friendly and user-friendly. We are also making it more accessible. So we are going to create a link with each ministry's website to the official gazette website. And the Department of Public Information website will also have a link to the official gazette website. So you can access the official gazette from various different platforms, the website of the official gazette. And you can read it there free. As I said, we are going to make it reader friendly and we are going to put a content page so you don't have to read the entire gazette. You can go to the specific section dealing with transport or mortgages or legal notices and you can read what you want to read. Then we have established a Facebook page. So please go on your Facebook page and search for Official Gazette Guyana. And there is a page there, like that page. And the Official Gazette will be loaded on that page every time it is published in a friendly format so that you can read it on your cell phone, you can read it on your iPad, you can read it on your computer screen. On the Facebook. So find the Official Gazette website, Official Gazette Facebook page and share it around. Like it, tell people about it, share it around. Instead of talking and cussing people on Facebook, as I see a lot of people are doing, you can go and protect your property by reading that Facebook page of the official gazette. You will be educated because they have a lot of educational materials in the official gazette. Plus, you can check whether your property is advertised there for passing to someone without your knowledge, or whether someone is mortgaging your property without your knowledge. All of that information you get on the official gazette website and the Facebook page. Also, hard copies of the official gazette will now be on sale at National Printers Limited. Right now, you can only get it at Office of the President. From now on, from this week, it should be available for sale at the National Printers Limited, so you can go and get hard copies. In addition to that, copies will be distributed to every local government office in the country. Every RDC office, you will get a copy or 2 copies posted in a conspicuous place on a notice board. You can go to your NDC office, you will get copies there posted on a notice board. You can go to the town hall in any municipality and you will see it there as well. You can go to any post office throughout the country and you will see copies of the Gazette posted somewhere there. And you can check it there. Hard copies, in addition to what you can get online. Persons in the diaspora, I'm speaking to you now directly. The experience is, and the empirical data suggests, that you are more likely to become the victim of this fraud. In the past, 90% of the defrauded persons are persons who are living outside of Guyana and therefore do not have access to the hard copy of the Gazette. And you choose not to read the Gazette online. When you do so at your peril. Please ensure that you go on the Facebook or you go on the website and read the Gazette whenever it is published, once every fortnight. Every 2 weeks, the Gazette is published, so go and get it and look at it. Hopefully, those measures will reduce the incidence of fraud. And of course, as I said, we are going to make legislative changes to the different pieces of legislation and strengthen them and increase the penalties. So anyone found guilty or found implicated and they are charged and found guilty by a court in connection with attempt to defraud people their property will face heavy penalties, years imprisonment. So that process is an ongoing one. The government's vaccination program for the COVID-19 virus is continuing across the length and breadth of Guyana. And we are starting with persons who are 60 years and above first, and of course, frontline health workers. I believe that we have completed the vaccination by now of all frontline health workers, and we are now dealing with persons who are 60 years and over. Please ensure that you take our senior citizens to the closest vaccination center and have them vaccinated. On the east coast of Demerara, we have several places where the vaccines are being administered. I want to take this opportunity to announce that this Saturday at Annandale, where I normally hold my outreach program, a team from the Ministry of Health will be there and they will be conducting vaccines. So I want to repeat that at Annandale on the east coast of Demerara, at my public outreach, a team from the Ministry of Health will be there to administer vaccines. So I am appealing to all persons on the East Coast in close proximity, 60 years and over, to please come to Annandale Saturday, where I normally do my outreach, and get your vaccines. Send your grandmother, send your parents, send your aunts, your uncle who qualify by that age to that place and have them receive their COVID-19 vaccine this Saturday. Now, while we are vaccinating people across the country, we are also at the same time seeing that there are more persons who are behaving recklessly and in violation of the COVID-19 guidelines. I want to use this program to appeal to every single one of you that this thing is still lethal, it is still deadly, and the vaccines, though you may have received them, they take a long time before they kick in, before they begin to immunize your system, and therefore you are equally, or you are liable to contact the virus until that vaccine begins to work. So please do not become lackadaisical because you have received the vaccine. And there are persons who have not even received the vaccine, but who are flouting the COVID-19 guidelines. The government will enforce it and enforce it strictly. We have coming up this weekend the important festival of Phagua. And I know that Phagua is a time where persons will be tempted to gather in large numbers. We are very strict with gatherings. You will see public announcements regulating how you can gather and assemble for the purpose of celebrating Phagua. Please ensure that you observe those guidelines. Again, I repeat, please ensure that you observe those guidelines for Phagua. I don't think that we will have the big Phagua celebration at this Guyana National Stadium and at Everest Ground as we normally would, and that is because we have a pandemic and we have to behave responsibly. So those big gatherings will not take place this year. So please behave responsibly and observe the COVID-19 guidelines. The budget of 2021 is now being disbursed. So you have a huge quantity of capital projects that are being currently awarded by the National Tender and Administration Board in accordance with the Procurement Act. It means that there are going to be huge economic activities right across the country. In fact, the contractors are complaining that supplies, building materials are not available. And I understand that there is a shortage of building materials on the international market as well. Guyana is no different. But you will find now the contracts as they are unfolding will kick off a large avalanche of economic activities across the length and breadth of Guyana, and it will give a great fillip to the economy. And we want everyone to benefit from this upward stride that the economy will take or will be taking in the next few weeks, and it will galvanize into greater speed as the year progresses. In your community, regardless of where you're living, I am convinced that there is a road or more than one roads that will be under construction, or there will be a capital project of some type that will be undertaken, no matter where you live, whether you live at Timbuktu, whether you live at Kurupung, whether you live at Madhya, whether you live at Lesem, whether you live at Crabwood Creek, whether you live at Charity, whether you live at Buxton, whether you live at Belladrum, in your community, there is going to be a road, there is going to be a street, there is going to be a building, there is going to be a school, there is going to be a health center which will be under rehabilitation, or a new one will be constructed. That is the nature of our budget. We are asking all citizens to get copies of the bills of quantities. Get copies of the bills of quantities and look at the quality of work that the contractor is doing. And if you see substandard work, then please report it. There's a clerk of work there. There must be a supervisor or an engineer who is representing the government's interest, your interest. Draw it to their attention. If you see Silver Valley is being used instead of Green Heart, and Green Heart is what the bill of quantities has, then you have to make that public. Publish it on Facebook, talk to the clerk of work, call in the media, make contact with a minister or someone in authority, and we will get down there to correct that. If you see the bill of quantity says 2x4 wood is to be used and they are using 1x3, then make it public. If you see stone is supposed to be used and they are using crush and run, make it public. Make it public. If the road doesn't have the border, the edging, there's a word for it, I can't remember it now. If the road, the street that is being constructed, doesn't have that side that is so important to keep the street intact, then make sure that you draw that to our attention. Somehow put it on Facebook, make an alarm, get onto the clerk of work in your ear on the project, and make sure you point out that. At the level of the government, we will continue to hold contractors strictly to their contractual obligations, and we will continue to demand from them work of a high quality. We are not going to accept substandard work, and contractors who wish to do substandard work, well, the contracts will be taken away and they will also be sued, and they will have to compensate the government for the loss of time on the project, for liquidated damages, and the various heads of compensation that are available at law. We are not going to waste time this time around with delinquent and errant contractors. We want everyone to get a piece of the pie, and that is why we are amending, or we have amended, the procurement rules. We are amending the protocols to create a more level playing field so that new contractors and small contractors can have a fair chance of bidding. As I said, we have relaxed certain requirements, we have restructured certain language in the procurement regulations and protocols to allow for smaller contractors and new contractors to break in to the industry. We have enough work for every person, for every contractor. There is enough work, but we wanted everyone to have a fair opportunity. We are also appealing to the larger contractors because we know that you have a lot of work. We know that in government. Each big contractor in this country has about 8, 9, 10 jobs, as much as that, at different locations in the country. You can't do all the jobs. We are appealing to you to subcontract the jobs to smaller contractors within the communities. And in that way, if all the big contractors who have huge projects across the country are able to cooperate and subcontract their work to smaller contractors within the community, then, everyone will get work and everyone will get a piece of the cake. And that is what we want in Guyana. We want Guyana belongs to every one of us, irrespective of race, irrespective of ethnicity, irrespective of political views. Yes, I don't like the APNU, AFC politicians. I don't, it's not that I don't like them, I don't like their politics, but I also will represent their interests. The supporters of APNU, AFC, we are saying to you, as a government, we are your government. It matters not that you didn't vote for us. We want you to enjoy everything that is available in Guyana, and we will fight every day to ensure that you are part and parcel of this success. Guyana belongs to all its citizens, and we want every single Guyanese to come on board of this ship. As we said, we are committed to taking this ship of Guyana to prosperity, and we don't want to leave anyone behind. I don't mind leaving the 32 who are in the parliament. I don't mind leaving them. But everyone else, I want you to come on board. That 32 is 31. I want to include Mr. Schumann on the ship because sometimes he gets broadside for no reason at all, poor fellow. But we want everyone to be on board. I'm just joking, even the 31. They are part of Guyana. They are Guyana's sons and daughters, and they must benefit equally, though their politics is destructive. But we have to forgive them. In every family, there is a decent, progressive one.